Welcome on into another episode of Believe in TCU. I'm Jackson James. Hopefully everyone's having a good day. It's a great day. Fall camp is getting underway for the TCU Horned Frogs. We talked a little bit about fall camp in last episode. Today I want to talk about, can Jaden Craig be the guy, right? What can the Frogs expect from him? And what does he bring to the table that could help TCU succeed this year? Because I think there's a huge possibility for Jaden Craig to have a really good year and lead one of the best offenses in college football this season. I think there's a chance. But let's break down a little bit of his bio real quick. What do they get on paper? Well, he's a 6'3", 230 quarterback. You know, he played majority of his ball, or all of his ball so far at Harvard grad, transferring to TCU. And on paper, it's like, okay, right? He's one of the best quarterbacks in Harvard history too, by the way. I'll mention that. But on paper, you're like, okay, Ivy League transferring to a Power 4, what would that transition look like? And I do think there is a little bit of wariness when it comes to that, a little bit of things you have to be nervous about. How will he adjust to the game? But looking at his highlights, I mean, his team was dominating, right? And he was at the forefront of that. And so let's break down what he excels at, right? The first thing I saw when I was looking at some of his tape was his pocket presence. He is another bona fide pocket passer, similar to a Josh Hoover, right? In TCU history, he shows great patience and composure inside the pocket. I mean, with that 6'3" frame, you know, being able to look over the lineman, he feels comfortable when he's in the pocket. And I think with the change that TCU's going from more of an air raid offense to a more pro-styled, a little bit more run-conscious offense, I do think there's a chance for him to really exceed at what he's good at, and especially staying in the pocket, either a 5-step or a 7-step drop back, and really, you know, processing the field. One of his physical frame, it's an ideal body type, right, for that type of role. And he's also able to absorb a little bit of contact if he stays in that pocket a little bit. And we'll get into more about the pocket, but I think one sneaky thing about Jaden Craig is just his overall athleticism and mobility. I do think there is a very high chance that his speed, his quickness will really open up this TCU playbook. I've been raving about this a little bit in terms of some of my articles I've written, but I'm also very excited to see what aspects that brings to the TCU offense. Last 2 years with Josh Hoover, he wasn't a very mobile quarterback, or at least he didn't try to. He was a bona fide through and through pocket passer. And so will that continue? Will Sonny Dykes and Gordon Sams really, tell Greg, hey, stay in the pocket, protect yourself? Or will it be like, hey, when you see an avenue to go, go? And I think that could massively open up this TCU offense, because that was one of the things I was lacking a little bit, right? Josh Hoover, he was a great thrower of the football, and he had a little bit of mobility in terms of pocket presence, but he wasn't going to get a 3rd and 5 with his legs. He wasn't going to extend plays with his feet. I think Jaden Craig has that ability, and so that should be another aspect to this TCU offense. And then also he brings in a really efficient down the field production. I mean, he had elite metrics at the FCS level. He had a plus 90 PFF grade when passing, with a big time throw rate, and he also allows his receivers to win one-on-one, or at least give them a chance to win one-on-one, which Jordan Dwyer might be a candidate for that a lot this year, right? With a numerous amount. I think the Jaden Craig Jordan Dwyer connection could be one of the sneakiest movements in all of college football. You get a guy in Jordan Dwyer, put up 700 yards-ish last season, a handful of touchdowns, right? And you get a guy in Jaden Craig who really excels at throwing the ball deep down the field, and also has really good red zone accuracy. I think this could be a really sneaky good duo, and Jordan Dwyer has another chance to be a part of a long lineage of great TCU wide receivers. And so let's talk about what areas he needs to improve, right? This is what he's coming with. What can he improve on? And what are some potential red flags I have for this upcoming season? First, it's a release and quickness, kind of his delivery motion. If I were to say some things he can improve on, it can be a tad slow. And now look, if your protection's there and it's a timing route and it's a long ball, that's fine, right? You get your 7-step drop and you can be able to stretch the field. Long release isn't the most insane thing in the world, but when you're doing a 5-yard hitch or anything quick, that could be, a little bit detrimental in terms of the whole timing. Now, again, he's had a whole offseason to really work on the timing with this offense. They're still learning more of the playbook every day at fall camp. And so I think that is an area where it's like, if you're a pro scout, you're like, okay, that's something to be a little bit worried about because it's bang bang in the league. But in college, if you can get a good rep from your line, you'll have an extra second to a second and a half almost if your offensive line can produce at a high level. Then there was a little thing about zipping the ball over the middle. He's not afraid to attack the middle, but you would like to see a little bit more of a rocket. He's shown up at camp being able to really fire the ball, which is great news. But at Harvard, he wasn't necessarily diamond up the middle of the field with real zip on the ball and tight windows. Now, again, that maybe is just a lack of opportunity, right? Maybe the offensive playbook there at Harvard didn't really call for more shots like that. TCU, maybe out of play action, you could be a little bit snappy, especially if the defense is reacting to the run and they have to go back. You got to be quick with the ball. I do think there's an opportunity for Craig to show kind of the combination of a release and a zip on the ball to come together as one. And if he can do that, Duke could be one of the best pocket passers in college football. Like I said, with a little bit of his scrambling, it's what he does with the ball when he's off script. I think he could prove on a little bit. I think every quarterback can improve on this area a little bit. There's no perfect quarterback off script, but obviously he can be a little bit more mobile with his legs. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be Lamar Jackson, but I'm saying it's a 2nd and 3. He could run outside the pocket and potentially get a first down. But it's also, he holds onto the ball a little bit too long, and I think maybe his athleticism maybe almost holds him back in a sense because he trusts himself to escape a pass rusher when really he should have thrown the ball away, or maybe even take what the defense has given you and take that 5-yard hitch instead of waiting for the post to develop, stuff like that. And then ultimately, my biggest red flag going into the season is just how is he going to adjust to Power 4 football, right? It's very much different than the Ivy League, right? Like, we can all admit that. But I definitely think just the overall tempo of the game could potentially get to him. Now, look, he'll have the opening game against UNC to really see, okay, that first couple of drives, I'd give him to the 4th drive. At the end of the 4th drive, will you see, okay, is the game too fast for him, or is he adjusted? So I think there's huge potential here when looking at the scouting report for Jaden Craig on what can he really elevate this offense to. But what can TCU do for Jaden Craig? And I think it's a little something with the Jordan Dwyer, like I mentioned earlier, but you also have Ed Small, and you also have a more focused running attack, a more pro-styled offense, right? If they're able to run the ball with high efficiency with a guy like Jeremy Payne, I think that is a huge thing to open up Jaden Craig's game, because if you're able to run the ball efficiently, that opens up the pass game. It's simple simple football math, right? If you're able to run the ball well, your passing game will probably open up as well. So I think there's huge opportunity for this to be a really positive relationship for Jaden Craig going into this season. But there should be one aspect of Jaden Craig's game that TCU will welcome with open arms. So what's the one aspect of Jaden Craig's game that TCU will open with wide open arms? And I think it's quite obvious. I've reiterated this multiple times, just looking at pure stats. It is going to be his ability to protect the football. I did question his off-script decision-making, but he also didn't put the ball in harm's way. He controlled the ball. He had 7 interceptions last season. The previous season, he had 3, and then in 2023, with a lot fewer, with under 100 pass attempts, he only had 2 interceptions. So he is shown to really protect the football, which this TCU team needs desperately. It was one of the things holding them back the last 2 years. Turnovers really, they really shot themselves in the foot with the turnovers. One of the big things that's going viral online right now is Josh Hoover's locking in when the moment gets hype or tight. And you look at that Arizona State game. I keep going back to it, but turnovers screwed them in that game. It really set them back. And you're like, it's just one game. But when it's a repeating pattern, I think it sets up your team really to claw back in a game in which they should have firm control. So for Jaden Craig, I've mentioned this before, his stats may need to take a leap, right? In 2024 or in 2025, he only threw for 2,869 yards. I believe that's almost roughly 1,000 yards behind Josh Hoover's stats from last season. But he protected the ball. He only took 9 sacks last season. So there is an opportunity for Jaden Craig to be a part of a very efficient offense, but he's at the forefront, right? They need to be able to control the ball. And that also goes into what's Gordon Samus's, offense going to look like. And as we get more from camp, we'll really get a more understanding of what this offense is going to look like. But that's the great thing of having a quality opponent in week 1 in North Carolina. You're going to see what this team looks like, right? You're going to see what this offense will do. We saw that last year, right? They were able to pass the ball. Jordan Dwyer had his breakout game, right? He was a new Horned Frog, and people learned his name off the first game purely because he was involved and he balled out, right? And so there's an opportunity for Jaden Craig to almost have that effect in this opening game because of how the offense works now. If it's more of a run-heavy offense, which reports are that it will be, his role will be more reduced to a game manager type role. And people hear game manager and they lose their mind. They're like, oh, how are you dissing my quarterback? Some of the best quarterbacks all time are game managers, right? Can you march down the field? Can you excel when your number is called, right? When it's 2nd and 10 and you're calling a play action, or 2nd and 5, you're calling play action. Can you execute, right? Just because your team is excellent at running the ball doesn't mean you are less of a quarterback, right? And so for Jaden Craig, the big things going into the season, what I expect from him are this. 1, protect the football, right? That was one of the biggest calling cards of him coming over to Fort Worth from Harvard. He can protect the football. That was one thing that TCU just needed to change, in general this season. Can he protect the football? 2, it's what other element to this TCU offense can he provide, right? Is that the scrambling a little bit? I'm not saying design read options for him or QB draws. No. Especially for a pocket passer, no. You're not going to do that. But can he extend plays with his feet and make the right decisions, right? Whether that's throwing the ball or, hey, I'm going to hold on to this ball and try to get 3 yards to make a 2nd and 5, a 3rd and 2, right? And the probability of getting the first down skyrockets at that point. That is going to be the second thing I want to see from Jaden Craig. And 2, this is more, again, the relationship with the receiver, but can his deep ball translate, right? We saw it at Harvard, right, a little bit. Can we see it continue in Big 12 play, right? That is going to be the big thing for Craig, is those 3 things. Now, again, the deep ball, can the receivers break out and help him? That will be maybe one of the more friction points of this TCU offense, is can a TCU receiver really step up and be the alpha on this team? Can they step up and be a true X or true Y? We'll have to see. And so that could be a major thing for Craig to have to overcome, is maybe a potential lackluster, receiving core. And maybe they don't have that X factor. Maybe Dwyer doesn't become that guy. But I think as a whole, with this wide receiver core, I think there's a huge opportunity to have one of the more well-rounded units in not only the Big 12, but college football as a whole. So let me know your guys' thoughts on Jaden Craig. I just want to give a quick little preview on his character. He's probably the more interesting figures on this TCU team, especially on this TCU offense for sure. A new face. I mean, it's always fun to talk about the quarterback of your team. So let me know your guys' take. Do you think he is going to be a home run transfer, or do you think, hey, we need to take a step back with our expectations? Because I'm very interested to see what you guys have to think. We're almost 3 weeks away from kickoff. I mean, it's going to be here sooner than you know it. So make sure you guys subscribe to Believe in TCU, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SiriusXM, all that jazz. Make sure to subscribe to the All Jacked Up Sports YouTube channel. I'll be posting this podcast as the first video podcast on that channel, which I'm super excited about. And I'll also be posting more shorts about NFL and whatnot, but trust, we'll always be producing Believe in TCU content for this season. So I'm super excited to be here, and thank you guys for listening. If you made it all the way to this point, make sure to leave a like so you know you enjoyed this whole episode, and go Frogs, and I'll see you guys in the next one.